Hi, my name is Madhushri, and the topic for my talk is novel citizen science initiatives on ANURANS of the lateritic plateaus. I'll begin by the introduction to the lateritic plateaus. These plateaus are basically rich in iron and aluminium and are very typical of tropical regions. The ones that we find in the Western Ghats are known to have formed about 25 to 40 million years ago, and they are a result of weathering of the surface rocks because of the tropical and the subtropical climatic conditions. That could be excessive monsoons or even winds and winds that are a part of the Western Ghats. Because of the fact that the plateaus are a part of the Western Ghats, the species discovery rate and endemicity on the plateaus is really, really high. In fact, just in the last 5 years, there have been about 5 new species that have been discovered, and 5 new species of just ANURANS that have been discovered from in and around the plateaus. So this is how the plateau, the structure of the plateau is. They're largely treeless, but you do see some form of vegetation on the plateau. And then there are formations of these ephemeral pools that dry out completely in the summers, and they are formed only during the monsoon season. The plateaus are really important in regulating water, and they also help replenish perennial streams. This is common to lateritic plateaus, even in the northern Western Ghats as well. And I think given the structure of the plateaus, that they're largely treeless, they have been considered as wastelands. So, and because of this categorization of them as being wastelands, the amount of infrastructure growth and urbanization is at an increased rate, and it is often uncontrolled. So I'm going to show you a couple of short videos of the type of habitats that we see on the lateritic plateaus. So this that you saw is a sacred grove with a lot of vegetation, and it is of course controlled by the community that manages the sacred grove. These are paddy fields, and at the back you can see some of the coconut plantations, and also acacia plantations are, the number of acacia plantations is really high on the plateaus. This is also part of a sacred grove again, and you can see that there are these ephemeral pools that are formed, and these ephemeral pools are of course breeding sites for most amphibians and reptiles that are found on the plateau. So what are ANURANS? So the thing is that I'm 100% sure that you know what ANURANS are, but as scientists we often complicate things, otherwise we do not get the validation that we deserve. So among the animals there are vertebrates, and the cold-blooded vertebrates are amphibians and reptiles. And in the group amphibians, there are 3 subclasses. 2 of the subclasses are already extinct. The third class is all living modern amphibians that you see today. And these amphibians are then divided into 3 orders: the frogs and toads, which make about 90% of the amphibians, and they are largely tailless. And these tailless frogs and toads are called ANURANS. And then, of course, you have salamanders and newts, which have tails and they walk on all 4s. And then caecilians, which are almost snake-like. The study site is a part of the central, lies on the edge of the central Western Ghats, and it's in the state of Karnataka. This is a university town, which is very popular because of the Manipal Academy of Higher Education. And on the west of the town is the Arabian Sea, and on the east of the town is the edge of the Western Ghats. So it's a very beautiful location that sort of shows the link between the coast and the mountains. So at the town we have identified all these areas which are named using an alphabet over here, which consists of paddy fields and sacred groves and even man-made pools and parks. And along with these identified sites, sampling surveys have been carried out along with the citizen scientists. Frogs in Manipal is the first citizen science initiative that we began in 2016, and till date there have been more than 500 participants on the who have participated in the initiative. And what we really do is that we just carry out leisurely frog walks across all the habitats or the identified sites that I just showed. And we also carry out educational workshops, not only in Manipal University, but also among school students and other university students that are around the town. And then we've also published a couple of resources and a guidebook so that people can see the information that is being circulated and also get aware of the number of frogs that are there around the town. Here you can see in this photograph a couple of students are photographing a fungoid frog. Most of the visual encounter surveys that are carried out are along with a leader or an expert, because if you have to venture out in the dark, you do need some form of training. Since the launch of Frogs of Manipal, we have recorded about 19 species of ANURANS, 3 of which are endangered, 7 of which are least concern, and 9 of which are not evaluated by the IUCN. There are also 10 different malformations that we've recorded. I'll speak about the malformations in a bit, but over here on the plate, you can see all the 19 species of ANURANS that have been recorded. And we also identified microhabitats that support ANURA. And I'll also speak about the microhabitats in a bit, but the thing with microhabitats is that from previous studies, we know that most of the amphibians or most of ANURANS that are found on the lateritic plateaus are actually dependent on the number of microhabitats that are there at a larger regional scale. So a microhabitat is basically just a habitat of a limited extent that differs from the larger surrounding. So if you see this plate A over here, it's the same sacred grove that I showed in the beginning. So you can see over here that it's an ephemeral pool plus vegetation that surrounds. So at a given site, you have 2 microhabitats that are available. Same with, if you see the plate B, you can see exposed laterite rock. These exposed laterite rocks sort of support all the Indirana species that are available on the plateau. So different microhabitats support different species, and that's why the number of microhabitats is really important. And this is just a basic bar chart to show you that the number of microhabitats on the y-axis, and then the study sites on the x-axis. So if you take any site, you can see that for example, I, where you have almost 8 microhabitats that are available, and then the total number of species is also really high. And in areas where there are very few microhabitats available, the number of species is also very less. And we're sort of exploring this relationship between the microhabitats and the total species that are present at that given site. So what are malformations? Malformations are basically just soft tissue and skeletal deformities that disrupt the symmetry of the body. In nature, we know that most living beings and most species are symmetrical. So anything that disrupts the symmetry is basically tagged as malformation. And here what we're looking at is looking at ANURAN malformations. And one of the main reasons why we're looking at ANURAN malformations is because malformations are strongly linked to the presence of anthropogenic disturbance. So more the anthropogenic disturbance, more is the number of malformed individuals that you will see at that given site. And when I talk about anthropogenic disturbance, what I really mean is that the amount of pollution or the amount of pesticides or even unwarranted trauma because of vehicular traffic and roads that could cause a malformation at that given site. So this was the main reason why we started documenting malformed frogs, and this is also the first study that sort of showed the occurrence of malformations in ANURANS that inhabit lateritic plateaus. Because of the presence of citizen scientists, we were able to document about 10 individuals in 2 years, and this was sort of a pilot study, and then we now have expanded the citizen science initiative called Malfrogs, which is basically just mapping all the malformed frogs and toads of India. And we started it with the India Biodiversity Portal, which might seem to be like a little cumbersome in the beginning, but when you get used to it, contributing to Malfrogs is really, really simple. You just have to click pictures of malformed individuals and then put in the date and location and upload it on the website. So there are also experts who can help you identify the species. I'm just going to wrap up everything now. I just have 10 minutes. And this is one of the major questions that I get asked often when we speak of citizen science science initiatives is the fact that what do we do of all this information, and then what do we do of people's participation as well? Well, one of the key factors in biodiversity conservation that I think most of us are now aware of is the fact that people's participation is the key, and increased understanding towards one's surrounding helps in better management of that particular region. So with citizen scientists, this is what we're trying to establish. We're trying to get people to involve in understanding the surrounding better. And with students and teachers participating in the citizen science initiative, it's just easier to get the university to accept that there is some biodiversity that resides in their surrounding, and then infrastructure projects should be planned with biodiversity concerns in mind. Also, lateritic plateaus are outside the reserved forest areas. So anything that happens on the lateritic plateaus, any sort of anthropogenic pressures or infrastructure development is unregulated and uncontrolled, and so is at a great amount. Even things like garbage dumping could do a lot of harm to the biodiversity that resides on the lateritic plateaus. So when people are aware and when people are educated about the biodiversity, then we could probably reevaluate our understanding towards these so-called wastelands. Yeah, thank you.